Sarah pulled her thin jacket closer to her body. The cold wind cut through the worn fabric like a knife. She sat on the metal bench at the bus stop, trying to make herself smaller. Her breath came out in white puffs in the freezing air. The street. Lights had just turned on. It was getting dark fast. Sarah looked at the old phone in her hand. The screen showed 6:30 p.m. She'd been waiting for almost an hour. The bus was late again. Her backpack sat beside her on the bench. Everything she owned was in that bag. 2 changes of clothes, a toothbrush, some crackers, and $12. That was all she had left in the world. Sarah was 19 years old, but she felt much older. 6 months ago, she had turned 18 and left the foster care system. The Rigio state said she was an adult now. They said she could take care of herself, but taking care of herself was harder than anyone had told her. She had tried to get a job. She had tried to find a place to live, but everything cost money she did not have. The cheap motel where she stayed took most of her money from her part-time job at the gas station. She had lost that job 2 weeks ago when she got sick and could not come to work. Now she had enough money for maybe 2 more nights at the motel. After that, she did not know what she would do. Maybe she could sleep in the park. Maybe she could find a shelter. But winter was coming, and the nights were getting colder. Sarah rubbed her hands together to keep them warm. Her fingers were red and stiff from the cold. She should have bought gloves instead of food yesterday. But she had been so hungry, a small sound made her look up. Across the street, she saw something moving in the shadows between 2 buildings. At first, she thought it might be a cat or a dog, but then the shape moved into the light, and Sarah's heart stopped. It was a little boy. He looked very young, maybe 4 or 5 years old. He wore a thin t-shirt and jeans with holes in the knees. No jacket, no shoes, just dirty white socks on his feet. His dark hair was messy and looked like it had not been washed in days. The boy stood at the edge of the street, looking around. He seemed lost and scared. His small body shook from the cold. Sarah stood up from the bench. She looked around to see if anyone else was watching. The street was empty except for a few cars driving by. No one else seemed to notice the little boy. The boy saw her looking at him. For a moment, they just stared at each other across the street. Then the boy started walking toward her. He moved slowly, like he was not sure if he should come closer. Sarah's heart was beating fast. Where were this child's parents? Why was he alone in the dark? Why was he not wearing a jacket? The boy reached the bus stop and stopped a few feet away from Sarah. Up close, she could see that his face was dirty. There were tear marks on his cheeks. His big brown eyes looked tired and frightened. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked softly. She did not want to scare him. The boy looked down at his feet. He did not answer. Sarah knelt down so she was at his eye level. "What's your name?" "Tommy," the boy whispered. His voice was so quiet that Sarah almost could not hear him. "Hi, Tommy. I'm Sarah." She tried to smile even though she was worried. "Where are your mom and dad?" Tommy's bottom lip started to shake. Fresh tears filled his eyes. "I don't have a mom and dad." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "Who takes care of you?" "Grandma," Tommy said. Then his voice got even quieter. "But Grandma went to sleep and won't wake up." Sarah understood what he meant, and it made her feel sick. This little boy was all alone. His grandmother was probably dead, and he had been taking care of himself. "When did Grandma go to sleep?" Sarah asked gently. Tommy held up 3 fingers. "This many days. 3 days. This child had been alone for 3 days. Sarah looked at his thin body and pale face. He probably had not eaten much in those 3 days. The wind picked up, and Tommy's whole body shook. Without thinking, Sarah took off her jacket and wrapped it around his small shoulders. The jacket was too big for him, but it would help keep him warm. "Thank you," Tommy whispered. Sarah was cold now without her jacket, but she did not care. This little boy needed it more than she did. "Tommy, do you have anywhere to go?" she asked. He shook his head. "I was looking for my mommy." "Your mommy? I thought you said you don't have parents." I don't have a real mommy, Tommy explained. But I want one. I was looking for someone who could be my mommy. Sarah's heart broke a little. This poor child was wandering the streets looking for a mother. He was so young and so alone. Tommy looked up at Sarah with his big, hopeful eyes. His voice was barely a whisper, but Sarah heard every word clearly. Can you be my mommy? The question hit Sarah like a punch to the stomach. She stared at the little boy, not knowing what to say. She could barely take care of herself. She had no money, no home, no job. How could she take care of a child? But as she looked at Tommy's face, something inside her broke and mended at the same time. This little boy needed someone. He needed protection, and love, and care. He needed a family. Sarah had never had a real family either. She had moved from foster home to foster home her whole life. She knew what it felt like to be alone and scared. She knew what it felt like to want someone to care about you. Sarah started to speak, but the words got stuck in her throat. Tommy stepped closer to her. Please, he whispered. I'll be good. I promise I'll be really good. Tears filled Sarah's eyes. She looked at this small, brave boy who had survived 3 days alone. She thought about her own empty life, her own loneliness. Maybe they could help each other. Okay, Sarah heard herself say. The word came out before she could stop it. Tommy's face lit up with the biggest smile Sarah had ever seen. He threw his small arms around her neck and hugged her tight. Thank you, Mommy, he whispered in her ear. Sarah hugged him back, feeling his small, warm body against hers. She did not know how she would take care of him. She did not know what would happen tomorrow. But right now, in this moment, they had each other. And sometimes, that was enough to start with. Sarah held Tommy close for a long moment. She could feel his small body shaking, and she was not sure if it was from the cold or from crying. Maybe both. When Tommy finally pulled away from the hug, Sarah looked into his face. Even in the dim light from the street lamp, she could see how thin he was. His cheeks were hollow and his eyes looked too big for his small face. Tommy, when did you last eat something? Sarah asked. Tommy thought for a moment. Yesterday morning. I found some crackers in Grandma's kitchen. Yesterday morning. Sarah felt sick thinking about this little boy being hungry for so long. She looked at her backpack and remembered the package of crackers inside. It was supposed to be her dinner, but Tommy needed it more. Are you hungry now? She asked. Tommy nodded quickly. My tummy hurts. Sarah opened her backpack and pulled out the crackers. They were cheap store-brand crackers, nothing special. But when Tommy saw them, his eyes got wide like she was giving him a treasure. Thank you, Mommy, he said, taking the package with both hands. Hearing him call her Mommy made Sarah's chest feel tight. She was not anyone's mother. She was just a 19-year-old girl who could not even take care of herself. But Tommy was looking at her like she was the most important person in the world. Tommy ate the crackers fast, like he was afraid they might disappear. He finished the whole package in less than 2 minutes. Better? Sarah asked. Yes, thank you. Tommy's voice was still quiet, but he looked a little less scared now. Sarah checked her phone again. It was almost 7 o'clock. The bus still had not come. She looked down the empty street and wondered if any buses were running tonight. Sometimes they stopped early when it was very cold. Tommy, where do you live? Sarah asked. Where is your grandma's house? Tommy pointed down the street. That way, but I don't want to go back there. Why not? Tommy's eyes filled with tears again. Because Grandma is still sleeping there, and she's cold, and she smells funny. Sarah understood. Tommy's grandmother had been dead for 3 days. No wonder the little boy did not want to go back to that house. He was probably scared and confused about what had happened to her. Have you told anyone about your grandma? Sarah asked. Tommy shook his head. I didn't know who to tell. Sarah realized that Tommy probably did not understand about calling 911 or talking to police. He was just a little kid who had been trying to handle something no child should have to handle alone. The wind blew harder, and both Sarah and Tommy shivered. Sarah was getting very cold without her jacket. but she could not take it back from Tommy. He needed it more than she did. "We need to get out of this cold," Sarah said. She looked around, but there was nowhere to go. The stores on this street were closed. The bus stop did not have any walls to block the wind. Sarah thought about the $12 in her pocket. It was all the money she had left. She had been planning to save it for another night at the motel, but Tommy needed food and warmth right now. "Come on," Sarah said, standing up. "Let's go find somewhere warm." Tommy took her hand without question. His small fingers were ice cold. Sarah picked up her backpack with her other hand, and they started walking down the street. 2 blocks away, Sarah saw the bright lights of a convenience store. It was still open. The store would be warm, and she could buy Tommy some real food. The bell on the door rang as they walked inside. The warm air felt good on Sarah's cold skin. The store clerk, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, looked up from his magazine. "Cold night," the clerk said, looking at Tommy with concern. "You folks okay?" "We're fine," Sarah said quickly. She did not want to answer too many questions. People might ask things she did not know how to answer. Sarah led Tommy to the food section. There were sandwiches, hot dogs, and soup in cups. Everything looked expensive to Sarah, but Tommy was still hungry. She could see him staring at the food with big eyes. "What do you want to eat?" Sarah asked him. Tommy pointed to a cup of chicken soup. "Can I have that?" Sarah looked at the price. $3. That would leave her with $9. But Tommy needed hot food. "Of course," Sarah said. She took the soup cup to the counter where there was a machine that added hot water. While the soup was getting ready, Sarah grabbed a small bottle of water and a candy bar. The total came to $5.50. More than half of her money was gone, but seeing Tommy's happy face made it worth it. They sat at a small table in the corner of the store. Tommy held the warm soup cup in both hands, letting it heat his cold fingers before he started eating. He ate slowly, like he wanted to make it last as long as possible. "This is the best soup ever," Tommy said between spoonfuls. Sarah smiled. It was probably just regular soup from a machine, but to a hungry child it was a feast. While Tommy ate, Sarah tried to think about what to do next. She could not take Tommy back to his grandma's house. She could not leave him alone on the street, but she also could not take care of him. She had no money, no home, no way to provide for a child. The smart thing to do would be to call social services. They would know how to help Tommy. They would find him a safe place to stay and people who could take care of him properly. But Sarah remembered her own experiences with social services. She remembered being moved from home to home, never staying in one place long enough to feel safe. She remembered social workers who were too busy to really listen, and foster families who just wanted the money the state paid them. Tommy was so young. What if they put him with people who did not really care about him? What if he got lost in the system like Sarah had? "Mommy," Tommy said, pulling Sarah out of her thoughts. "Yes? Are you going to leave me?" The question made Sarah's heart hurt. Tommy's big brown eyes were full of worry. He had already lost his grandmother. He was probably scared that Sarah would leave him too. "I'm not going anywhere right now," Sarah said. It was the only promise she could make. Tommy finished his soup and leaned against Sarah's arm. "I'm sleepy," he said. Sarah looked at her phone. It was almost 8 o'clock. Tommy needed a warm, safe place to sleep. Sarah thought about the motel where she had been staying. She had enough money for one more night, maybe 2 if she was careful. "Come on," Sarah said. "Let's go find somewhere to sleep." They walked back out into the cold night. Sarah used her phone to call a taxi. It would cost money she did not have, but it was too far to walk with a tired little boy. The taxi driver looked surprised when he saw them, but he did not ask questions. During the ride, Tommy fell asleep against Sarah's shoulder. She looked down at his peaceful face and felt something she had never felt before. It was like a fierce need to protect him, to keep him safe no matter what. When they reached the motel, Sarah gently woke Tommy up. The motel was not fancy. It was old and needed paint, but it was clean and warm. Sarah had been staying there for 2 weeks. Mrs. Chen, the elderly woman who managed the motel, was behind the front desk. She looked surprised to see Sarah with a child. "Sarah, who is this little one?" Mrs. Chen asked in her accented English. "This is Tommy," Sarah said. He's with me." Mrs. Chen looked at Tommy's dirty clothes and thin face. Her expression softened. "He looks hungry and cold." "He's okay now," Sarah said. "I just need to pay for tonight." Sarah put her remaining money on the counter. It was exactly enough for one night. After tonight, she would have nothing left. Mrs. Chen counted the money slowly. Then she looked at Sarah with knowing eyes. "This little boy. Where is his family?" Sarah did not know how to answer. She could not lie to Mrs. Chen, who had been kind to her, but she also could not tell the whole truth. "He doesn't have anyone else," Sarah said quietly. Mrs. Chen studied both of them for a long moment. Then she handed Sarah the key to her room. "Room 12, same as always." "Thank you," Sarah said. As they walked to the room, Mrs. Chen called after them. "Sarah, there are extra blankets in the closet, and I think there might be some crackers and juice boxes in the office. For the boy." Sarah turned back to look at Mrs. Chen. The older woman was watching them with concerned but kind eyes. "Thank you," Sarah said again. "Really? Thank you." Mrs. Chen nodded. "Get some rest, both of you." In the motel room, Sarah helped Tommy wash his face and hands in the small bathroom. She found a clean t-shirt in her backpack that was too big for him but cleaner than what he was wearing. Tommy crawled into the bed and pulled the covers up to his chin. "This bed is so soft," he said. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed. "Tommy, tomorrow we need to talk about some important things, okay?" "Okay," Tommy said sleepily. "Will you stay with me tonight?" "Yes," Sarah said. "I'll stay." Tommy closed his eyes and was asleep within minutes. Sarah sat in the room's only chair and watched him sleep. His face looked peaceful now, not scared like it had at the bus stop. Sarah did not sleep that night. She sat in the chair and thought about what she had gotten herself into. She had no money, no job, no way to take care of a child. Tomorrow she would have to make some hard decisions. But for tonight, Tommy was safe and warm and fed. And somehow that felt like enough. Sarah woke up to sunlight streaming through the thin motel curtains. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then she heard soft breathing beside her and remembered everything. Tommy had crawled into bed with her sometime during the night. He was curled up next to her, still wearing her oversized t-shirt. His dark hair was messy from sleep, but his face looked peaceful. Sarah checked her phone. It was almost 9 in the morning. She had finally fallen asleep in the chair around 4, but Tommy's quiet crying had woken her up. He had been having a bad dream about his grandmother. Sarah had held him until he fell back asleep. Now she had to face the reality of their situation. She had no money left. Mrs. Chen had been kind enough to let them stay last night, but Sarah could not expect that kindness to continue. She needed a plan. Tommy's eyes fluttered open. When he saw Sarah, he smiled the biggest smile she had ever seen. "Good morning, Mommy," he said, stretching his small arms. "Good morning, Tommy," Sarah said softly. Every time he called her Mommy, it made her heart feel full and scared at the same time. Tommy's stomach made a loud growling sound. He put his hands on his belly and giggled. "I'm hungry again." Sarah looked through her backpack. She had no food left. The crackers from yesterday were gone and she had no money to buy more. "Let me see what I can find," Sarah said. She remembered Mrs. Chen mentioning crackers and juice boxes in the office. Maybe she could ask for some of those. "Can I come with you?" Tommy asked. "Of course." They walked to the motel office together. Tommy held Sarah's hand tightly, like he was afraid she might disappear. Mrs. Chen was behind the desk, sorting through some papers. "Good morning," Mrs. Chen said. "How did you both sleep?" "Good, thank you," Sarah said. "Mrs. Chen, you mentioned last night about some crackers? Tommy is hungry and I—" Of course, Mrs. Chen said quickly. She went to a small cabinet behind the desk and pulled out a box of crackers and 2 juice boxes. "Here, for the boy." "Thank you so much," Sarah said. I don't know how to repay you. Mrs. Chen looked at Sarah with serious eyes. Sit down, dear. Both of you. Sarah felt nervous. Maybe Mrs. Chen was going to ask them to leave. Maybe she was going to call someone about Tommy. They sat in the 2 chairs in front of the desk. Tommy opened his juice box and drank it happily, not understanding the tension in the room. Sarah, Mrs. Chen said gently, I have been running this motel for 20 years. I have seen many people come and go. I know when someone is in trouble. Sarah did not know what to say. This little boy, Mrs. Chen continued. He is not your son, is he? Sarah's face turned red. It's complicated. Where is his family? Sarah looked at Tommy, who was eating crackers and looking around the office with curiosity. She did not want to talk about his grandmother's death in front of him. He doesn't have anyone, Sarah said quietly. He was alone when I found him. Mrs. Chen nodded slowly. I see. And you? You have no money left. It was not a question. Sarah nodded. What is your plan? Mrs. Chen asked. Sarah felt tears building in her eyes. I don't have a plan. I can barely take care of myself, but I couldn't leave him alone. Mrs. Chen was quiet for a moment, studying both of them. Tommy had finished his crackers and was now playing with a small toy car he had found on the desk. Look at me, little one, Mrs. Chen said to Tommy. What is your name? Tommy, he said shyly. And Sarah, she is taking care of you? Tommy nodded vigorously. She's my new mommy. She gave me soup and let me sleep in a warm bed. Mrs. Chen's expression softened even more. I see. She turned back to Sarah. This cannot continue like this. You have no money, no job, no way to care for a child properly. Sarah's heart sank. Mrs. Chen was right, of course. Sarah had been foolish to think she could handle this situation. However, Mrs. Chen continued, I may have a solution, a temporary one. Sarah looked up hopefully. I need help here at the motel. Cleaning rooms, helping with laundry, small repairs. The pay is not much, but it comes with a place to stay. Sarah could not believe what she was hearing. You mean, there is a small apartment above the office. It has been empty for months. It is not fancy, just 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a bathroom, but it is clean and warm. Sarah felt like she might cry. Mrs. Chen, I don't know what to say. You can say yes or no, Mrs. Chen said with a small smile. But you must understand this is temporary. You need to think about what is best for this child in the long run. What do you mean? Sarah, you are very young. You have no experience with children. This boy needs stability, proper medical care, schooling. You cannot provide these things right now. Sarah knew Mrs. Chen was right, but the thought of giving Tommy to someone else made her stomach hurt. But for now, Mrs. Chen continued, you can both stay here. You can work for me and Tommy can be safe and fed. It will give you time to figure out what to do next. Tommy looked up at Sarah with trusting eyes. Are we going to stay here, Mommy? Sarah looked at Mrs. Chen. The older woman was offering them a chance. Maybe their only chance. Yes, Sarah said. Yes, we can stay. Mrs. Chen showed them the small apartment upstairs. It was tiny, but it was clean and bright. There was a bed in the bedroom, a small couch in the living area, and a kitchen with a refrigerator and stove. It's perfect, Sarah said, and she meant it. After weeks of living in a single motel room, this felt like a palace. Tommy ran around the apartment, exploring every corner. Look, Mommy, there's a real kitchen and a big window. Mrs. Chen explained Sarah's job duties. She would clean the motel rooms after guests checked out, help with laundry, and do small maintenance tasks. In exchange, they could live in the apartment rent-free, and Sarah would earn $50 a week. It was not much money, but it was more than Sarah had right now. And most importantly, it meant Tommy would have a safe place to stay. When can I start? Sarah asked. Today if you want. But first, let's get some food in this kitchen. Mrs. Chen took them to a small grocery store and bought basic supplies: bread, milk, eggs, peanut butter, and some canned soup. She also bought Tommy a few simple toys and a coloring book. "This is an investment," Mrs. Chen explained when Sarah tried to protest. "A happy child is a quiet child, and quiet children are good for business." Back at the motel, Mrs. Chen showed Sarah how to clean the rooms properly. Tommy followed them around, asking questions and trying to help. He seemed fascinated by the vacuum cleaner and wanted to push it himself. "He is a good boy," Mrs. Chen told Sarah quietly while Tommy was distracted with his new coloring book. "But Sarah, you must think seriously about his future, and yours." "What do you mean?" "You found each other in a crisis. That does not mean you are meant to be together forever. Sometimes the kindest thing is to let go." Sarah watched Tommy coloring at the small table in their new apartment. He was humming a little song to himself, looking happier than she had seen him since they met. "I know you're right," Sarah said, "but I can't think about that right now. Right now I just want to keep him safe." Mrs. Chen nodded. "That is good for now. But promise me, you will think about calling social services soon. They can help find Tommy a permanent family." Sarah promised, but even as she said the words, she knew it would be the hardest thing she had ever done. That evening, Sarah cooked dinner for Tommy in their tiny kitchen. It was just scrambled eggs and toast, but Tommy acted like it was the best meal he had ever had. "You're the best mommy in the whole world," he said, giving her a hug. Sarah hugged him back, breathing in the smell of his clean hair. Mrs. Chen had let them use the laundry room to wash his clothes, and he looked like a different child. After dinner, they sat on the small couch together. Tommy curled up next to Sarah while she read him a story from one of the children's books Mrs. Chen had found in the motel's lost and found box. "Mommy?" Tommy said when the story was finished. "Yes? Are you going to keep me forever?" The question broke Sarah's heart. "Tommy, Because I don't want anyone else to be my mommy. Just you." Sarah held him tighter. "Let's just take it one day at a time, okay?" "Okay," Tommy said sleepily. "But I hope every day you decide to keep me." That night, after Tommy fell asleep in the bed they shared, Sarah sat by the window looking out at the street. She thought about Mrs. Chen's words. She thought about Tommy's future and her own. She was 19 years old with no education beyond high school, no family, and no real job skills. How could she possibly raise a child? But when she looked at Tommy sleeping peacefully beside her, she could not imagine her life without him. In just 2 days, he had become the most important thing in her world. Sarah did not have any answers yet, but for the first time since they met, she had hope. They had a roof over their heads, food to eat, and each other. Maybe that was enough to build on. Maybe Mrs. Chen was right that this arrangement was temporary. But Sarah was going to make the most of whatever time they had together. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight they were both safe and warm, and not alone. And sometimes that was all that mattered. Sarah woke up early the next morning with a heavy feeling in her stomach. She had been thinking all night about what Mrs. Chen had said. Tommy needed proper care, medical attention, and a real family. Sarah knew she had to do the right thing, even if it broke her heart. Tommy was still sleeping beside her, his small hand holding onto her shirt. Even in sleep, he did not want to let her go. Sarah gently moved his hand and got out of bed. She made coffee in the tiny kitchen and sat at the small table, trying to find the courage to do what she knew she had to do. She had to call social services. She had to get Tommy the help he needed. Sarah found the number for the Department of Children and Family Services online. Her hands shook as she dialed. A woman with a tired voice answered. "DCFS. This is Linda speaking." "Hi," Sarah said quietly. "I need to report a child who needs help." "Okay, let me get some information from you. What is your name?" "Sarah Mitchell." "And what is the situation with the child?" Sarah took a deep breath. "There's a little boy about 4 years old. His grandmother died and he's been alone for several days. I found him on the street." "Where is the child now?" "He's with me." I've been taking care of him for 3 days. There was a pause. Ma'am, are you a relative of this child? No, I couldn't leave him alone. I see. We'll need to send someone out right away. What's your address? Sarah gave the address of the motel. Linda told her that a caseworker would be there within 2 hours. After Sarah hung up the phone, she felt sick. In 2 hours, someone would come to take Tommy away. She sat at the table and tried not to cry. Mommy? Sarah turned around. Tommy was standing in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. His hair was sticking up in all directions and he looked so small in her oversized t-shirt. Good morning, sweetheart, Sarah said, trying to keep her voice normal. Why do you look sad? Tommy asked, walking over to her. Sarah picked him up and put him on her lap. Tommy, we need to talk about something important. Tommy's face got serious. Am I in trouble? No, baby. You're not in trouble. But some people are coming to see us today. They want to help you. Help me how? Sarah struggled to find the right words. How do you explain social services to a 4-year-old? Well, you know how you've been staying with me? These people, they help children find permanent families, people who can take really good care of them. Tommy's eyes got wide with fear. You mean they want to take me away from you? They want to make sure you have everything you need, a real home with people who can be your family forever. Tommy's bottom lip started to shake. But I want you to be my family. I don't want anyone else. Sarah held him tighter. I want that too, Tommy. But I'm very young, and I don't have much money. You deserve someone who can give you everything you need. I don't need everything, Tommy said, tears starting to fall. I just need you. Sarah's heart was breaking. The people who are coming, they're going to ask you some questions. Just tell them the truth, okay? Tommy nodded, but he looked scared. 2 hours later, there was a knock on the door. Sarah opened it to find a woman in her 40s with short brown hair and kind but tired eyes. She carried a large bag and wore a badge that said, Department of Children and Family Services. Sarah Mitchell? I'm Jennifer Walsh, a caseworker with DCFS. Come in, Sarah said. Jennifer looked around the small apartment, taking notes on everything she saw. Her eyes stopped on Tommy, who was hiding behind Sarah. And you must be Tommy, Jennifer said in a gentle voice. Hi there. Tommy did not answer. He pressed closer to Sarah. Tommy, this is Ms. Jennifer. She wants to talk with us, Sarah said. Jennifer sat down on the small couch. Sarah, can you tell me exactly how you found Tommy? Sarah explained about meeting Tommy at the bus stop, about his grandmother, and about the last 3 days. Jennifer wrote everything down in a notebook. And Tommy, Jennifer said, turning to the little boy, can you tell me about your grandmother? Tommy looked at Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. Grandma wouldn't wake up, Tommy said quietly. I tried to shake her, but she was cold. Jennifer's expression softened. That must have been very scary for you. Tommy nodded. And Sarah has been taking care of you since then? She's my new mommy, Tommy said firmly. She gave me food and a warm bed and she reads me stories. Jennifer looked at Sarah. Tommy, can you go play with your toys for a few minutes while I talk to Sarah? Tommy looked worried. You're not going to take me away while I'm playing, are you? No, sweetheart. I promise I won't take you anywhere without talking to you first. Tommy went to the corner where his coloring books were, but Sarah could tell he was listening to every word. Sarah, Jennifer said quietly, you're very young to be caring for a child. Do you have any family support? No family, Sarah said. But Mrs. Chen, who owns this motel, she's helping us. She gave me a job and this place to stay. That's generous of her. But Sarah, caring for a child is a huge responsibility. Tommy will need medical care, schooling, proper nutrition. Do you have any experience with children? No, Sarah admitted, but I care about him. I won't let anything bad happen to him. I can see that you care, but caring isn't always enough. Tommy needs stability and resources that you may not be able to provide. Sarah felt defensive. He was starving and alone when I found him. I've kept him safe and fed for 3 days. And you've done a wonderful job in a crisis situation. But this can't be a permanent solution. Jennifer explained that Tommy would need to be placed in temporary foster care while they tried to locate any other relatives. If no relatives were found, he would be placed for adoption. What if I wanted to adopt him? Sarah asked. Jennifer looked surprised. Sarah, you're 19 years old. You have no steady income, no permanent housing, no family support. Adoption. Agencies look for stability and resources. But what if I could provide those things? It would take time to establish that stability. In the meantime, Tommy needs immediate care. Sarah felt panic rising in her chest. You're going to take him today, aren't you? I'm afraid so. We have a wonderful foster family that specializes in caring for young children who have experienced trauma. Tommy had stopped coloring and was staring at them with wide, frightened eyes. Please, Sarah said. Give me a chance to prove I can take care of him. Give me some time. Jennifer looked at Tommy, then back at Sarah. There might be one option. If you're serious about wanting to be Tommy's guardian, you could apply for emergency kinship care. What's that? It's a program for relatives or people with a significant relationship to the child. You would need to pass background checks, home studies, and parenting classes, but it would allow Tommy to stay with you temporarily while the process is completed. Sarah's heart jumped. How long would that take? Several months. And Sarah, you need to understand, this would require you to prove you can provide a stable home, steady income, and proper care. If you can't meet those requirements, Tommy would still need to be placed elsewhere. Sarah looked at Tommy, who was now standing next to her chair, holding onto her arm. I want to try, Sarah said. What do I need to do? Jennifer spent the next hour explaining the process. Sarah would need to complete an application, submit to background checks, attend parenting classes, and have her home inspected. Most importantly, she would need to prove she could financially support Tommy. The good news is that you would receive some financial assistance from the state while Tommy is in your care, Jennifer explained. But you still need to show you have stable employment and housing. I have a job here at the motel, Sarah said. That's a start, but you'll need to show consistent income over time. Jennifer also explained that Tommy would need to see a doctor immediately and that she would check on them regularly. Ms. Jennifer, Tommy said suddenly, are you going to let me stay with Mommy Sarah? Jennifer knelt down to Tommy's level. We're going to try to work something out, sweetheart, but there are some things Sarah needs to do first to make sure she can take the best care of you. I want to stay with her, Tommy said firmly. I know you do. Jennifer gave Sarah a thick packet of forms and a list of requirements. I'll be back in 1 week to check on your progress. Sarah, I need you to understand how serious this is. If you can't meet these requirements, I will have to place Tommy in foster care. After Jennifer left, Sarah sat on the couch with Tommy curled up next to her. The packet of forms seemed enormous and overwhelming. Mommy, what did the lady mean about things you have to do? Tommy asked. I have to prove that I can be a good mommy to you, Sarah explained. I have to take some classes and fill out some papers. You're already a good mommy, Tommy said. Thank you, baby. But other people need to see that too. That evening, Sarah spread all the forms out on the kitchen table. There were applications for financial assistance, requests for background checks, schedules for parenting classes, and lists of documents she needed to gather. Mrs. Chen knocked on the door and came in with a cup of tea for Sarah. The social worker, she was here for a long time, Mrs. Chen said. They want to take Tommy away, Sarah said, feeling overwhelmed. But they said if I can prove I'm capable of taking care of him, maybe he can stay. Mrs. Chen looked at the pile of papers. That is a lot of work. I know. But I have to try. Mrs. Chen sat down across from Sarah. Are you sure this is what you want? Being a mother is not easy, even under the best circumstances. The next morning, Sarah woke up with a long list of things to do. She had 6 days before Jennifer returned, and she needed to make real progress on all the requirements. Tommy was still sleeping, so Sarah quietly made coffee and looked through all the paperwork again. She needed to find a doctor for Tommy, register for parenting classes, and most importantly, prove she had stable employment and income. Mrs. Chen knocked softly on the door. "How are you feeling this morning?" she asked. "Scared," Sarah said honestly. "There's so much to do and I don't know where to start." "Start with the most important thing first," Mrs. Chen said. "What does the social worker want to see most?" Sarah looked through her notes. "Stable income and a safe living environment. And Tommy needs to see a doctor." "Then let's work on those things today." Mrs. Chen offered to watch Tommy while Sarah went to find a doctor. There was a community health clinic about 10 blocks away that offered services for people without insurance. Sarah walked to the clinic, carrying all of Tommy's information in a folder. The waiting room was crowded and noisy, but the receptionist was kind when Sarah explained the situation. "We can see him this afternoon," the receptionist said, "but you'll need to bring proof that you're his legal guardian." Sarah's heart sank. "I don't have that yet. I'm in the process of applying for kinship care." The receptionist looked sympathetic. "Let me talk to the doctor. We might be able to work something out since this is an emergency situation." Dr. Martinez was a young woman with gentle hands and a warm smile. She agreed to examine Tommy even without the official paperwork. "Bring him in at 3 o'clock, she said. "And don't worry about payment today. We'll figure that out later." Sarah felt like crying with relief. One problem solved. Back at the motel, Sarah found Tommy helping Mrs. Chen fold towels in the laundry room. He was carefully matching corners, his tongue sticking out in concentration. "I'm helping," Tommy announced proudly when he saw Sarah. "You're doing a great job," Sarah said, giving him a hug. "Mrs. Chen taught me how to fold the right way," Tommy said. "She says I'm a good helper." Mrs. Chen smiled. "He is very good, and he asks many questions." That afternoon, Sarah took Tommy to the clinic. He was nervous about seeing the doctor, but Dr. Martinez was patient and gentle with him. "Tommy is underweight," Dr. Martinez told Sarah privately. "But that's expected given what he's been through. With proper nutrition, he should catch up quickly." She gave Tommy a full examination and several vaccinations he had missed. Tommy was brave, only crying a little when he got his shots. "He'll need to come back in a month," Dr. Martinez said. "And Sarah, you're doing a good job with him. I can see. He trusts you completely." The next day, Sarah started her first parenting class. It was held at a community center across town, and she had to take 2 buses to get there. Mrs. Chen offered to watch Tommy during the classes. The class was taught by a woman named Mrs. Rodriguez, who had been a foster parent for 15 years. There were 8 other people in the class. Some were foster parents, some were adoptive parents, and some, like Sarah, were trying to care for children they had found themselves responsible for. "Parenting is the hardest job in the world," Mrs. Rodriguez said during the first class. "And it's the only job where you don't get any training before you start." Sarah learned about child development, discipline techniques, and how to recognize signs of trauma in children. She took careful notes on everything. "Children who have experienced loss need extra patience and security," Mrs. Rodriguez explained. "They may test you to see if you'll leave them too." Sarah thought about how Tommy always wanted to hold her hand and how he panicked whenever she was out of his sight for too long. During the break, Sarah talked to another woman in the class named Linda, who was fostering her teenage niece. "The paperwork is overwhelming," Linda said, "but it gets easier, and the support you get from the state really helps." "How much support?" Sarah asked. "For a child Tommy's age, probably around $600 a month, plus medical coverage and food assistance." Sarah felt hope rising in her chest. $600 a month would be more than she made at the motel. Combined with her wages from Mrs. Chen, it might be enough to support them both. When Sarah got back to the motel, she found Tommy and Mrs. Chen making cookies in the small kitchen upstairs. "Mommy!" Tommy ran to her with flour on his nose. "We made cookies. Mrs. Chen taught me how to crack eggs." Sarah looked at the mess in the kitchen and then at Mrs. Chen's amused expression. "I hope you don't mind," Mrs. Chen said. "He wanted to make something special for you." "I don't mind at all," Sarah said, hugging Tommy. "Thank you both." Over dinner, Tommy chattered about his day with Mrs. Chen. He had helped clean 3 motel rooms, learned how to make beds properly, and even helped fix a leaky faucet. Mrs. Chen says I'm a natural helper, Tommy said proudly. After Tommy went to bed, Mrs. Chen sat with Sarah at the kitchen table. How was the parenting class, she asked. Good, scary but good. I learned a lot. Sarah paused. Mrs. Chen, can I ask you something? Of course. Why are you helping us so much? You barely know us. Mrs. Chen was quiet for a moment. I had a daughter once, she said finally. She would be about your age now. Sarah waited for her to continue. She died when she was 5 years old. Car accident. Mrs. Chen's voice was soft. For many years after that, I was very angry at the world. Why did bad things happen to good people? Why did children suffer? I'm so sorry, Sarah said. When I see you with Tommy, I see something beautiful. You found each other when you both needed saving. Maybe that is not an accident. Sarah felt tears in her eyes. I'm so scared I'll mess this up. Of course you were scared. Any good parent is scared. But Tommy is lucky to have someone who cares so much. The rest of the week passed. In a blur of activities, Sarah attended 2 more parenting classes, took Tommy for a follow-up appointment with Dr. Martinez, and completed more paperwork than she had ever seen in her life. She also had to get letters of recommendation from people who knew her. Mrs. Isenkiroulaus, Chen wrote a beautiful letter about Sarah's character and work ethic. Dr. Martinez wrote about Tommy's improvement under Sarah's care, but Sarah still needed more references, and she realized how few people she really knew. She had moved around so much in foster care that she had never formed lasting relationships with adults. Finally, she thought of her last foster mother, Mrs. Williams. Sarah had lived with her for almost 2 years before aging out of the system. Mrs. Williams had been kind and fair, and she had tried to keep in touch with Sarah after she left. Sarah found Mrs. Williams' number and called her, nervous about asking for help. Sarah, how wonderful to hear from you, Mrs. Williams said warmly. How are you doing, honey? Sarah explained the whole situation. Mrs. Williams listened without interrupting. Of course I'll write you a reference letter, Mrs. Williams said. Sarah, you were one of the most responsible young people I ever fostered. If you think you can handle this, then I believe you can. Really? Sarah asked, feeling emotional. Really. You've got a good heart and a strong will. That little boy is lucky to have you. By Friday, Sarah had completed most of the required tasks. She had doctor's appointments scheduled for Tommy, letters of recommendation, proof of her employment with Mrs. Chen, and certificates from her parenting classes. But she was still worried about the home inspection. Jennifer had said someone would come to look at their living situation and make sure it was appropriate for a child. What if they think the apartment is too small? Sarah asked Mrs. Chen. Then they think it is too small, Mrs. Chen said practically. You cannot change the size of the apartment. You can only make sure it is clean and safe. Sarah spent Saturday cleaning every corner of the small apartment. She organized Tommy's toys, made sure all the safety outlets were covered, and stocked the kitchen with healthy food. Tommy helped by putting his coloring books in neat piles and making sure all his cars were parked in a straight line. Why are we cleaning so much? He asked. Because someone is coming to visit on Monday to make sure our home is nice for you, Sarah explained. It's already nice, Tommy said. It has you in it. Sunday evening, Sarah sat with Tommy on the small couch, reading him a bedtime story. Tomorrow, Jennifer would return to check on their progress. In a few days, someone would inspect their home. Sarah had done everything she could think of to prove she could be a good mother to Tommy. But she knew that might not be enough. Mommy, Tommy said as she tucked him into bed. If the lady says I can't stay with you, will you visit me? Sarah's heart broke a little. Tommy, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure we stay together. But if we can't? Sarah knelt beside the bed and took his small hands in hers. If we can't stay together, I will never stop loving you. And I will never stop trying to find a way back to you. Tommy nodded solemnly. I'll never stop loving you either. That night, Sarah lay awake thinking about everything that had happened in the past week. She had learned more about parenting, about the system, and about herself than she had ever thought possible. She still felt unprepared and overwhelmed, but she also felt something she had never felt before, a deep, fierce love that made her want to fight for something bigger than herself. Tomorrow she would find out if love and determination were enough to keep their little family together. Jennifer arrived Monday morning exactly on time. She looked surprised when she saw how organized Sarah had become. The kitchen table was covered with neatly arranged folders, each labeled with different requirements. "You've been busy," Jennifer said, settling into a chair. "I completed everything on your list," Sarah said, trying to keep the nervousness out of her voice. Tommy sat close to Sarah, coloring quietly, but listening to every word. Jennifer went through each folder carefully. She reviewed the doctor's reports, the parenting class certificates, and the letters of recommendation. She asked Sarah detailed questions about her plans for Tommy's education, his daily routine, and how she would handle emergencies. "This is impressive work, Sarah," Jennifer said finally. "You've met almost all the initial requirements." Sarah felt a wave of relief, but Jennifer was not finished. "However, there are still some concerns. Your income, while stable, is quite low, and this apartment, while clean and safe, is very small for 2 people. The state assistance would help with the income," Sarah said. "And Tommy doesn't mind sharing the space. We're used to it now." Jennifer made notes in her file. "The home inspector will be here Wednesday. If that goes well, we can move forward with the temporary kinship placement." After Jennifer left, Sarah felt exhausted but hopeful. She had passed the first test. Now she just had to get through the home inspection. Over the next few weeks, Sarah settled into a routine with Tommy that felt more and more like a real family. Every morning she would wake up early to help Mrs. Chen with the motel breakfast setup. Tommy would sit at the counter, eating cereal and chatting with the guests. "That's my mommy," he would tell anyone who would listen. "She makes the best pancakes in the whole world." Sarah had learned to make pancakes from Mrs. Chen, and it had become Tommy's favorite breakfast. In the afternoons, while Sarah cleaned rooms, Tommy would help in small ways. He became the official towel folder and was very proud of his work. The motel guests loved him. He was polite and cheerful, and he made everyone smile. "He's good for business," Mrs. Chen told Sarah. "People like staying somewhere that feels like a family." Sarah started taking Tommy to the public library twice a week. He loved story time, and Sarah would check out books to read to him at bedtime. Tommy was smart and curious. He asked questions about everything and remembered every story. Sarah read to him. "He's going to need to start school soon," Sarah realized one evening. Tommy would turn 5 in a few months, which meant kindergarten. The thought of school made Sarah nervous. She would have to register Tommy, buy him school supplies, and figure out how to get him there and back every day. It was another reminder of how much responsibility she had taken on. But when she watched Tommy playing with the other children at story time, she felt proud. He was kind and gentle with younger kids, and he shared his toys without being asked. Whatever else Sarah worried about, she knew Tommy was becoming a good person. Dr. Martinez was pleased with Tommy's progress at his monthly checkup. "He's gained 4 pounds and grown an inch," she told Sarah. "Whatever you're doing, keep it up." Tommy was proud of being bigger and stronger. "I can lift heavier things now," he told Sarah. "Mrs. Chen says I'm getting muscles." But it was not all easy. Tommy still had nightmares sometimes. He would wake up crying, calling for his grandmother, or worried that Sarah had left him. Sarah learned to comfort him quickly and quietly, holding him until he fell back asleep. "The nightmares will get better with time," Mrs. Rodriguez explained in parenting class. "Children need to feel safe before they can heal from trauma." Sarah also noticed that Tommy got anxious when she was out of his sight for too long. If she went to the store without him, he would be worried and clingy when she returned. "He's afraid you'll disappear like his grandmother did," Jennifer explained during one of her monthly visits. "This is normal for children who have experienced loss." Sarah learned to prepare Tommy whenever she had to leave him. She would tell him exactly where she was going and when she would be back. She would give him a small toy or picture to hold while she was gone. Slowly, Tommy began to trust that Sarah would always come back. Sarah was learning too. She discovered that being a parent meant constantly worrying about someone else. She worried about Tommy's health, his happiness, his future. She worried about money, about whether she was making the right decisions, about whether she was enough for him. But she also discovered joys she had never expected. The way Tommy's face lit up when he saw her at the end of the day. The sound of his laughter when she tickled him. The way he would reach for her hand when they crossed the street. "I love you, Mommy," became something Tommy said every day, usually at random moments. When Sarah was making lunch, when they were watching TV, when she was tucking him into bed. Each time he said it, Sarah felt her heart grow a little bigger. Sarah also started to feel like she had a place in the world for the first time in her life. Mrs. Chen depended on her work at the motel. Tommy needed her care and love. She was not just drifting anymore. She had purpose. One evening in late fall, Sarah was helping Tommy with a simple puzzle when he looked up at her with a serious expression. "Mommy, were you lonely before you found me?" The question surprised Sarah. "Why do you ask that?" "Because I was very lonely before I found you. And now I'm not lonely anymore." Sarah put down the puzzle piece she was holding. "Yes, Tommy, I was lonely too." "Good," Tommy said, going back to his puzzle. "I'm glad we found each other." Sarah realized that Tommy was right. They had found each other. And in taking care of him, she had learned to take care of herself too. She had become more responsible, more organized, more patient. She had learned to put someone else's needs first, and somehow that had made her feel more complete. The seasons changed, and Sarah and Tommy settled deeper into their life together. Tommy started to call Mrs. Chen Grandma Chen, and she seemed to love it. She taught him simple words in Chinese and showed him how to use chopsticks. "He's like my grandson," Mrs. Chen told Sarah. "The grandson I never had." Sarah completed more parenting classes and started taking some online college courses during Tommy's nap times. She wanted to get her degree so she could provide better for Tommy in the future. Money was still tight, but the state assistance helped. Sarah learned to budget carefully and to find free activities for Tommy. They went to the park, the library, and free museums. Tommy was happy with simple pleasures, a new coloring book, a trip to the playground, or a special snack. "He's not demanding," Mrs. Chen observed. "Many children his age want toys and treats all the time. Tommy is grateful for small things." Sarah thought this was because Tommy remembered what it was like to have nothing. He appreciated everything he had now because he knew it could disappear. One day, while Tommy was playing in the motel office, Sarah overheard him talking to a guest who was checking in. "My mommy works here," Tommy was telling the man proudly. "She's the best worker in the whole motel, and we live upstairs in our own apartment. It has a real kitchen and everything." The guest smiled at Tommy's enthusiasm. "You sound very happy," he said. "I am happy," Tommy said seriously. "I used to be sad all the time, but now I have a family." Sarah felt tears in her eyes listening to this conversation. Tommy truly did see them as a family now. And so did she. That night, as Sarah was putting Tommy to bed, he looked up at her with his big brown eyes. "Mommy, are you happy too?" Sarah thought about the question. A year ago, she had been alone, scared, and unsure about her future. Now she had responsibility, purpose, and love. "Yes, Tommy," she said. "I'm very happy." "Good," Tommy said, snuggling under his blanket. "Because happy families stay together forever." Sarah kissed his forehead. "Sweet dreams, baby." As she turned off the light, Sarah hoped with all her heart that Tommy was right about happy families staying together forever. Because she could not imagine her life without him anymore. They had built something real together, a family made not of blood, but of choice and love and daily care. And Sarah was going to fight to protect it, no matter what challenges lay ahead. 6 months had passed since Tommy and Sarah first met at the bus stop. Now they were sitting in a waiting room at the courthouse, both dressed in their best clothes. Today was the day the judge would decide Tommy's future permanently. Sarah wore a simple blue dress that Mrs. Chen had bought for her. Tommy had on khaki pants and a white shirt, with his hair combed neatly to one side. He held Sarah's hand tightly and swung his legs from the chair that was too big for him. "Are you nervous, Mommy?" Tommy whispered. "A little bit," Sarah admitted. "Are you?" Tommy nodded. "But I'm not scared, because we're together." Jennifer sat across from them, reviewing her file one more time. Over the past months, she had visited them regularly and had seen how much both Sarah and Tommy had grown. "The judge is fair," Jennifer told Sarah quietly. "She'll look at what's best for Tommy." A woman in a black robe opened the courtroom door. "Mitchell case," she called. They all stood up and walked into the courtroom. It was smaller than Sarah had expected, with wooden benches and tall windows that let in bright morning light. Judge Harrison was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She looked through the papers on her desk before speaking. "This is a hearing to determine permanent placement for Tommy Rodriguez, age 4. I've reviewed all the documents, and I'd like to hear from the parties involved." Jennifer spoke first, explaining Tommy's situation and how Sarah had cared for him over the past months. She read reports from Dr. Martinez, Mrs. Rodriguez from the parenting classes, and character references from Mrs. Chen and Mrs. Williams. "Tommy has shown remarkable improvement under Miss Mitchell's care," Jennifer said. "His physical health has improved. He's met all developmental milestones, and he appears to be emotionally bonded to Miss Mitchell." Judge Harrison listened carefully, making notes. Then she looked at Sarah. "Miss Mitchell, you're very young to be asking for custody of a child. Can you tell me why you believe you should be Tommy's guardian?" Sarah stood up, her heart beating fast. She had practiced this speech many times, but now her mind felt blank. "Your Honor, when I first met Tommy, we were both alone and scared. I didn't plan to become his mother, but he needed someone, and I—" Sarah paused, trying to find the right words. "I couldn't walk away from him." "Being unable to walk away is not the same as being prepared to raise a child," Judge Harrison said, gently. "What makes you think you can provide what Tommy needs?" "I know I'm young and I don't have much money," Sarah said, "but I love Tommy more than anything in the world. In the past 6 months, I've learned how to take care of him. I've taken parenting classes, found him medical care, and made sure he has everything he needs." "What about your future plans? Education? Career?" "I'm taking college classes online while Tommy naps. I want to get my degree so I can provide better for him. Mrs. Chen has offered to promote me to assistant manager at the motel, which would mean better pay and benefits." Judge Harrison made more notes. "And what about Tommy's needs as he grows older? School, activities, college someday?" "I've already researched the elementary school in our district. Tommy loves books and learning. I'll make sure he has every opportunity to succeed." The judge turned to Tommy. "Tommy, can you come sit up here with me?" Tommy looked at Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. He climbed down from his chair and walked to the judge's bench. Judge Harrison helped him up into a special child-sized chair beside her. "Tommy, do you understand why we're here today?" she asked gently. "Yes. You're going to decide if I can stay with my mommy. Tell me about living with Sarah. Do you like it?" Tommy's face lit up. "I love it. Mommy reads me stories every night and makes me pancakes for breakfast. She taught me how to tie my shoes and how to be brave when I get shots at the doctor." "What do you like best about living with Sarah?" Tommy thought for a moment. "She never leaves me alone. And when I have bad dreams about Grandma, she holds me until I feel better." "Do you have friends? Do you like playing with other children?" "Yes. At the library I have storytime friends, and at the motel sometimes families stay with kids and I play with them. Mommy says when I go to school I'll have even more friends." "Tommy, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would you want to live?" Without hesitation, Tommy said, "With Mommy Sarah, in our apartment above the motel with Grandma Chen downstairs." Judge Harrison smiled at that. "Grandma Chen? That's what I call Mrs. Chen. She's like my grandma now. She makes cookies with me and teaches me Chinese words." The judge asked Tommy a few more questions about his daily routine, his health, and his happiness. Tommy answered everything honestly and enthusiastically. When Tommy returned to sit with Sarah, Judge Harrison called Mrs. Chen to the witness stand. Mrs. Chen walked up confidently. She had insisted on coming to court today to speak for Sarah and Tommy. Mrs. Chen, you've observed Sarah and Tommy's relationship closely. What is your opinion of Sarah as a mother? Sarah is very young, yes, Mrs. Chen said in her accented English. But she has an old soul. She works hard, she is responsible, and she loves that boy like he came from her own body. What about her ability to provide for Tommy? Money is not everything. Sarah gives Tommy what he needs most: love, attention, stability. She puts him first in all decisions. Many parents with much money do not do this. Do you believe Sarah can handle the long-term responsibilities of raising a child? Mrs. Chen nodded firmly. I raised my own daughter. I know what good parenting looks like. Sarah has natural instincts. She learns from mistakes. She asks for help when she needs it. Tommy is lucky to have her. Dr. Martinez testified next, speaking about Tommy's improved health and Sarah's dedication to his medical care. Sarah has never missed an appointment, Dr. Martinez said. She asks thoughtful questions and follows all medical advice carefully. Tommy has gone from an underweight, traumatized child to a healthy, happy little boy under her care. Mrs. Rodriguez from the parenting classes also spoke on Sarah's behalf. Sarah was one of my most dedicated students, she said. She took detailed notes, asked excellent questions, and applied everything she learned. She sought out additional resources on her own, and even started a support group for other young parents in similar situations. Finally, Judge Harrison asked to speak with Sarah and Tommy together. I want to observe your interaction, she explained. Sarah and Tommy approached the judge's bench. Tommy immediately took Sarah's hand. Tommy, can you show the judge how you tie your shoes? Sarah asked. Tommy sat down on the floor and carefully tied his sneakers, concentrating hard on making the loops even. When he finished, he looked up at Sarah proudly. Perfect, Sarah said, giving him a hug. You've been practicing. Tommy, are you looking forward to starting school? Judge Harrison asked. Yes. Mommy showed me the school on the computer. It has a big playground and a library. What do you want to be when you grow up? A helper, like Mommy. She helps people at the motel and she helps me every day. Judge Harrison watched Sarah and Tommy for several more minutes, noting how naturally they interacted, how Tommy looked to Sarah for guidance, and how Sarah gently encouraged him. Finally, everyone returned to their seats. Judge Harrison reviewed her notes one more time before speaking. This is an unusual case, she began. We have a very young woman asking for custody of a child she has no biological or legal relationship to. Normally, the court would be reluctant to grant such a request. Sarah's heart sank. However, the judge continued, the evidence shows that Miss Mitchell has provided excellent care for Tommy over the past 6 months. His physical health has improved dramatically. His emotional development appears normal and healthy, and it's clear that a strong bond has formed between them. Sarah held her breath. Miss Mitchell, the court has some concerns about your age and financial resources. However, your dedication to Tommy's well-being has been exemplary. You've completed all required training, maintained stable employment and housing, and shown remarkable maturity in handling this responsibility. Judge Harrison looked at Tommy, who was watching her with wide, hopeful eyes. Tommy, it's clear that you love Sarah and feel safe with her. The court's primary concern is your best interests and your happiness. The judge paused for what felt like forever. Therefore, I am granting Miss Mitchell temporary guardianship of Tommy Rodriguez for a period of 1 year, with a review hearing scheduled for next October. Sarah felt like she might faint with relief. Tommy jumped up from his chair. Does that mean I get to stay with Mommy? Tommy asked excitedly. Yes, Tommy, Judge Harrison said with a smile. You get to stay with Sarah. Tommy ran to Sarah and threw his arms around her. Sarah picked him up and hugged him tight, tears streaming down her face. However, Judge Harrison continued, Miss Mitchell, this is a conditional arrangement. You must continue to meet all requirements. Tommy must remain healthy and happy. You must maintain stable employment and housing. and you must complete additional parenting education courses. I understand, Your Honor, Sarah said, wiping her tears. Thank you so much. There will be monthly check-ins with Ms. Walsh for the first 6 months, then quarterly visits until the review hearing. If everything continues to go well, we can discuss permanent adoption at that time. Jennifer stood up. 1 year later, Sarah stood at the same bus stop where she had first met Tommy. But this time, everything was different. She wore a clean, professional-looking jacket and carried a leather bag. Gifts from Mrs. Chen when Sarah had been promoted to assistant manager of the motel. Her hair was styled neatly and she looked confident and happy. Beside her, Tommy stood in his new school clothes. He had grown several inches in the past year and no longer looked like the thin, scared little boy from that winter night. His backpack was full of school supplies, and his face was bright with excitement. Are you ready for your first day of kindergarten? Sarah asked, adjusting his collar. I'm ready, Tommy said proudly. Mrs. Rodriguez says I already know all my letters and numbers. The bus pulled up to the stop, the same bus route Sarah had been waiting for that cold evening, a year ago. But now they were taking it to Tommy's new school, not to escape from their problems. As they climbed onto the bus, Tommy waved goodbye to Mrs. Chen, who was watching from the motel office window. She had become like a grandmother to both of them, always there with advice, help, and love. At the school, Sarah walked Tommy to his classroom. His teacher, Ms. Adams, was young and enthusiastic. She had met with Sarah the week before to discuss Tommy's background and needs. He's going to do wonderfully, Ms. Adams told Sarah. He's bright, curious, and very well behaved. Sarah knelt, down to Tommy's level. Remember what we talked about? If you need anything, you tell Ms. Adams. I'll be here to pick you up at 3 o'clock. I remember, Tommy said. He looked around the colorful classroom with interest rather than fear. Mommy, look at all the books, Sarah smiled. Tommy's love of reading had only grown stronger over the past year. They visited the library twice a week, and Tommy could now read simple books by himself. Have a wonderful day, sweetheart, Sarah said, giving him a hug. I love you, Mommy, Tommy said, just like he did every day. I love you too. Sarah watched through the classroom window as Tommy introduced himself to other children and chose a puzzle to work on. He looked completely comfortable and happy. As Sarah walked back to the bus stop, she thought about how much had changed since that first court hearing. The monthly visits with Jennifer had gone smoothly. Tommy had continued to thrive in every way. Sarah had completed more parenting classes and was now halfway through her online degree program. Most importantly, they had become a real family, not just two people taking care of each other out of necessity, but a mother and son who loved each other deeply and chose to build a life together every single day. The review hearing 6 months ago had gone even better than the first one. Judge Harrison had been impressed with Tommy's progress and Sarah's growth as a parent. She had granted Sarah permanent guardianship and given her permission to begin adoption proceedings. It's clear that you two belong together, Judge Harrison had said. This court is happy to make that relationship legally permanent. Now Sarah was officially Tommy's legal guardian, and the adoption would be finalized within the next few months. Tommy would legally become Tommy Mitchell, and Sarah would officially be his mother in every way. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message from her college advisor. She had maintained a 3.8 GPA while working and raising Tommy, and her advisor was encouraging her to apply for a scholarship program for single mothers. You have a real future in business management, the advisor had written. Your experience running the motel operations would be valuable in many fields. Sarah was considering studying hotel management more seriously. Mrs. Chen had talked about retiring in a few years and had hinted that Sarah might be able to buy the motel from her eventually. It was a big dream, but not impossible anymore. At work, Sarah threw herself into her duties with renewed energy. She had restructured the motel's booking system, improved their online presence, and increased their occupancy rate by 20%. Mrs. Chen relied on her more and more each month. You have a gift for business, Mrs. Chen told her, and for making people feel welcome. These are valuable skills. Sarah had also started a support group for young parents, meeting every Saturday morning in the motel's small conference room. Many of the participants were former foster children like herself, trying to break cycles of instability and create better lives for their children. "You give people hope," one young mother had told Sarah. "You show us it's possible to make it work." That afternoon, Sarah waited at the school pickup area with a group of other parents. She no longer felt out of place or too young. She belonged here, just like all the other mothers and fathers waiting for their children. When Tommy burst out of the classroom door, his face was glowing with excitement. Mommy, I made 3 new friends and we built a castle with blocks and Ms. Adams read us a story about dragons." Sarah laughed at his enthusiasm. "Slow down. Tell me everything." As they rode the bus home, Tommy chattered nonstop about his first day. He had loved story time, enjoyed art class, and was excited about learning to write his name in cursive. "And guess what?" Tommy said. "When Ms. Adams asked us to draw pictures of our families, I drew you and me and Grandma Chen all together." "What did you write about your family?" Sarah asked. "I wrote that my mommy found me when I was lost and scared, and now we take care of each other forever and ever." Sarah felt tears in her eyes. "That's exactly right." Back at the motel, Mrs. Chen was waiting with fresh cookies and eager to hear about Tommy's first day. As Tommy told her everything again, Sarah watched the 2 people who had become her family. Mrs. Chen had filled the grandmother role perfectly, teaching Tommy about her culture, cooking with him and spoiling him just enough. She had also become like a mother to Sarah, offering guidance and support when Sarah needed it most. "We are an unusual family," Mrs. Chen often said, "but we are a real family." That evening, as Sarah helped Tommy with his homework, simple worksheets, with letters and numbers, she marveled at how normal their life had become. Homework, bedtime stories, planning for the next day, the ordinary routines of family life that she had never experienced as a child. "Mommy," Tommy said as she tucked him into bed, "will you tell me the story again?" "Which story?" "The story about how we found each other." Sarah sat on the edge of the bed and began the story Tommy loved to hear. "Once upon a time there was a little boy who was very brave and a young woman who thought she was all alone." She told him about the bus stop, about the first night in the motel, about Mrs. Chen's kindness, and about all the challenges they had overcome together. "And then what happened?" Tommy asked, even though he knew the ending by heart. "And then they became a family, and they lived happily ever after." "The end," Tommy said with satisfaction. "The end," Sarah agreed. But as she turned off the light, Sarah knew it was not really the end. It was just the beginning of the rest of their lives, together. 2 years later, Sarah stood in the same courtroom where Judge Harrison had first granted her guardianship. But this time she was there for Tommy's official adoption ceremony. Sarah wore a new dress, navy blue with small flowers. Tommy wore a suit and tie that made him look very grown up for a 6-year-old. Mrs. Chen sat in the front row, beaming, with pride. "Today we make official what has been true for a long time," Judge Harrison said with a warm smile. "Sarah, you have proven yourself to be an exceptional mother. Tommy, you have shown remarkable resilience and love." When the judge signed the final papers, Tommy officially became Tommy Mitchell. Sarah was officially his mother, not just his guardian. Their family was complete and legal and permanent. "How do you feel, Tommy?" Judge Harrison asked. "Happy," Tommy said simply. "And safe. And loved." "And you, Sarah?" Sarah looked at her son, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude and joy. "I feel like the luckiest person in the world," she said. Outside the courthouse, they took pictures to mark the special day. Mrs. Chen had brought a small cake, and they had a picnic in the park across the street. "Mommy," Tommy said as they sat on a blanket under a big oak tree, "do you remember when we were both scared and lonely?" "I remember," Sarah said. "I'm glad we were both at that bus stop at the same time." Sarah pulled him close for a hug. "Me too, baby. Me too." As the sun set over the city, Sarah reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. From that cold, desperate night at the bus stop to this perfect afternoon celebrating their family. She had saved Tommy, but in truth, he had saved her too. He had given her purpose, taught her about unconditional love, and shown her that families could be created through choice and commitment, not just blood. "What do you want to do tomorrow?" Sarah asked Tommy as they packed up their picnic. "Same thing we do every day," Tommy said with a grin. "Be a family," Sarah laughed. "That sounds perfect to me." Hand in hand, they walked back toward the bus stop. That had started it all. But this time they were going home together, as mother and son forever.